Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. India's telecom industry will soon ring a new order. Vodafone-Idea and the Idea Cellular are to merge to create the country's biggest phone company by subscribers, dislodging Bharti Airtel, which has been at the top for 15 years. The new 1.55 lakh crore rupees entity will also be the world number 2 after China Mobile. The deal will see Aditya Birla Group, the promoters of Idea, gradually raising its stake in the combined entity, while Vodafone Group will reduce its own, with the aim of both holding equal stakes for a period of time. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze what the impact of the merger will have on the industry and consumer. Joining me on the program today are TK Arun, editor Opinion, The Economic Times; Ravi Vishweshwaraya Sharda Prasad, independent telecom consultant; Virag Gupta, cyber and telecom law expert; and NK Goyal, chairman, Telecom Equipment Manufacturers Association. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. TK Arun, I'd like to start with you, of course. Why this consolidation? Was it a dire need? Was it what Vodafone and Idea required in India to compete with someone like a Reliance?
Yeah, exactly. So when competition intensifies the way it has after the entry of Jio, it is only natural that other players consolidate. The strategy that Jio has rolled out is to throw money. It's exactly the same kind of strategy we have seen in online e-commerce, in taxi hailing, etc., where people who have money to burn are willing to provide services at a very low cost in order to capture customers, capture a share of the market, and make it difficult for competitors. So the only people who can compete with such an entrant is somebody who also has very deep pockets, who can sustain the competition for a longer time, longer period, and take on the opponents of this kind. So it is good that consolidation is happening. In the absence of this consolidation, consumers would have suffered in the long run. So initially it might seem that the degree of competition is coming down, the number of players will come down to 3 or 4 or maximum 5, and that might hurt competition. But this is not really the case. The competitors who remain will be strong enough players, and there are rules in place to ensure that these people do not collude. There are limits on how much of market any particular player can have. There are limits on the amount of spectrum they can hold. So all this is in place. So it is good to have very strong players who have deep enough pockets and who have the capacity to diversify into non-telecom areas.
Indeed.
And cross-subsidize, if necessary, pure telecom operations.
Indeed.
So I think this is a welcome move.
You know, Ravi Prasad, it seems like this is the new thing as far as the telecom sector is concerned, isn't it? I mean, Reliance started it with Jio in terms of moving from voice to data dependence, and that's how they're able to provide this kind of services that they've been providing their customers. So is that the new thing in the telecom industry, and that's what Vodafone and Idea also are going to move towards?
Yes, absolutely. This is kind of the maturation of the industry, and if you look at the next 20 years, what it is going to be is that you're not going to be pure voice players. You're going to be actually content providers. You're going to be multimedia providers. So what Reliance Jio has done is that it has changed the rules of the game. That it is not going to be a pure services provider in terms of just providing commodity voice or commodity data. It is actually going to be providing content. Now, to handle this kind of situation, you really need consolidation in the telecom industry among the competitors, otherwise they will be swallowed up. You already had seen that Idea was undergoing some kind of cash flow losses. So certainly, you know, what happens is that there is a consolidation in the industry.
I'm going to cut you short. I'm going to come back to you because I think that we have an audio issue with your mic at this point in time. So we're going to fix that and try and come back to you. Yeah, but in the meantime, NK Goyal, you know, as far as the industry itself is concerned and the sector is concerned, how do you believe it's going to impact the sector, and what kind of an impact it's going to have on the industry?
I would like to start by saying that Reliance may be a trigger which looks to the world now as of the moment. But merger acquisitions in telecom sector were thought of and were in line for last so many years. That's why you have seen so many mergers happening. I don't want to repeat all those things. Of course, this has come now. That is the first thing. Mergers are always good because then you become a strong player. At the same time, it is also a fact that when the new players came in, I want to give some other view. The new players came in like Telenor, Uninor, Etisalat, all those small players, the tariff suddenly came down. Now with 4 or 5 players, strong players, we don't hope tariffs to come down. Tariff will be stable, but they will be able to compete also with each other. But as far as industry is concerned, it is good for consumer, looks good now. In the longer run, I think consumer will feel something.
Okay. Ravi Prasad, moving on from that glitch now, let's continue to what you're talking about. You know, and taking a cue from what N.K. Goyal has said as well. You know, it's better to have, do you believe, 2 or 3 really strong players in the market rather than having, you know, 7 or 8 little players who can't do too much for the industry.
Yes, certainly, because this is a sign of maturation of the telecom industry. And if you really look forward over the next 20 years, what Reliance Jio has done is that it has totally changed the rules of the game. Because now it is not really a voice provider, and voice is a commodity service. It actually is a content provider, a multimedia content provider, and that is the way the telecom industry is going to go, where content is king, and the rest of it are just going to be dumb pipes where people do it. Now, you certainly do have a consolidation that will be coming, because to take on Reliance Jio, all its competitors have to consolidate. So now you have the Vodafone-Idea merger, which will have 35% of subscribers and about 41% of revenues. The second strong player is Airtel, which is also consolidating with Telenor. And then you have Arcom, which consolidated with Aircel and MTS. So certainly there is a consolidation that is coming, and a result of this consolidation is that the operational costs of some of these big players will go down a lot. It has to be seen whether that operational costs will translate into lower tariffs for customers, whether they pass on the benefits of savings to customers. But certainly this consolidation has been a long time coming. There was no market which was as fragmented as India. There's really no telecom market in the world which has at least half a dozen players in each circle. Most of them really have 3 to 4 operators, and that is what I see in India is 3 to 4 operators really being there. There'll be about 4 with BSNL and MTNL. Really 4 strong players and maybe a couple of also
So that's a
RANs.
good thing for the consumer and for the telecom industry is what you're saying.
Well, in the short run, it reduces consumer choice. But what happens is, let's say 5 years down the line, they will be able to roll out all kinds of new services. And what you have really, I'm not talking about economies of scale, you have kinds of economies of scope. So a lot of services which are not even thought of today will maybe be available 4 or 5 years from now. And that is something that only very large players who have a long-term vision for the future can offer.
Sure.
Because 5 years from now, there could be all kinds of services in e-governance, m-governance, multimedia services, data combined with video, which could be offered through two-way interactive TV, multicasting, where it's not just a broadcast where here we are sitting in the studio talking to people, but people could actually be sending us information, real-time interaction. Now, a lot of these services will really only be possible in the future, and it's only large companies which have that infrastructure, that technological capabilities, and the deep pockets which can offer this.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, those are some very valid points that you raised, and we hope to see some kind of interactive services like you just mentioned in the near future, and we hope that some companies like this can actually bring it to our doorstep. But, Virag Gupta, as far as monopoly is concerned, when you have just 2 or 3 players, what happens then is they could possibly collude with each other. This is something that TK Arun was mentioning earlier, but he also said that we have laws in place so as to ensure that some of these bigger players don't really take the consumer for a ride. So is that the case as far as the law itself is concerned?
No, I don't think that laws are in the place. I will tell you from all the 3 aspects. The first, most important aspect of this telecom is that in digital India, 3 main areas will be impacted by this merger. Number 1 is the payment system which is being created. Number 2 is the entertainment, and number 3 is the overall this financial inclusion which is being happening in the digital India. Now, let us talk about the TDSAT last month order, wherein they directed try to review the free buys being offered by the Jio. And secondly, there are many challenges are there. TRAI has asked for more penal powers, but yet In the call drop matter, we have seen that TRAI has asked for the powers which were not accepted by the Supreme Court, and later on even the government has not given extended such powers which are required in this new age. Now, let us talk about the challenges which are being faced in this new merger. The first challenge is revenue market share challenge, which has yet to be seen. The second is a spectrum, whether they will be surrendering these spectrum or they will be getting back some money for those spectrum. And third is there are many regulatory challenges, whether they both will coexist, whether the common brand name will be there or they both will be operating from their individual names, and if both will be operating individual names, what will happen to the interconnectivity charges. Now, all these things, we can't handle all these things by a old Telegraph Act and other laws, and I feel that TRAI and our telecom laws, all these needs to be updated because of the two reasons. Number one, the Reliance Jio, which has come with these free buys and wherein they will be earning revenue from the data. Now, we don't know how to handle this situation, neither from the regulatory point of view nor from the taxation point of view. And the second is WhatsApp or other these companies, when they are offering the free services, how to handle such situation. And because of all these things, and what the telecom secretary, this controversy was there, that overall debt on the telecom sector is more than the market capitalization of this telecom sector, and this will finally be impacting the public and the government. So I think that to handle all these issues, not only from the taxation, regulatory, TRAI power and defining these new areas are required, and government must take action on all such
Fair
areas.
enough. That's a very valid point that you're raising, of course. TK Arun, you know, in a day and age when everything is advancing, so there is a need for the laws to be advanced and take a relook at the laws as well to ensure that, you know, everything is in place. For instance, the freebies thing that that he just mentioned about, Virag Gupta mentioned about, you know, Reliance has been doling out freebies, even the new entrants are, you know, might dole out freebies, and that's the way forward really as far as these players are concerned. But can they sustain that model?
See, they cannot sustain this. They have to charge people, and they have been to charge. From the 1st of March onwards, they have been levying a tariff. So, while these freebies were disruptive and they affected the revenue streams of other telecom players, it has done immense benefit to consumers. Now, the cost of data in India was actually a little high as compared to global standards before the entry of Jio. Now, the costs have come down sharply, and this benefits consumers. Indian consumers need much more of data. Now, while it is true that the law per se does not cover the entire field, regulation does. And TRI Act gives the regulator the power to determine many of these things where there could be a matter of conflict. And it is certainly true that if you continue with free pricing, then there is an issue. But you cannot continue it indefinitely, and they have already gone to a sustained payment model. Now the issue is, it is not just content that will be provided. All these telecom players now have payment bank licenses. The Airtel Payment Bank is very much in operation, and this is actually what will achieve financial inclusion. Asking our conventional banks to open more branches, which are very expensive to run and maintain, will not achieve financial inclusion. Airtel started in Rajasthan with 10,000 banking correspondents, which means virtually all their kirana operators who recharge their phones are acting as banking correspondents.
Yes.
This is actually what will make rostered banking a reality for common people, and ask them to cash in and cash out as required, and make banking a real possibility. Now, once telecom enters, they already have entered financial services, then new possibilities come up. They could enter insurance. Insurance is technologically very outdated, and new technology is moving in. Fintech is concentrating on insurance. There is one company in the US which accepted an insurance claim, processed it, and credited the claimed amount to the insured person within flat 3 seconds. So this is the way with which things are moving. So if one big player does this, then others will follow, and these people must have the vision, capacity, the financial backing, etc., to execute these kind of plans. So I think it's a good thing, and if there are regulatory challenges, they must be addressed. And we have a system of consultations and taking views of all industry into account. and moving things forward. And let me tell you, when Reliance originally entered the telecom market and disrupted the entire field by offering a 500
500
rupee
phone.
cost of ownership of telecom, everybody cried foul. This was illegal, this will kill the industry, this is unfair. But that really heralded the Indian telecom revolution.
Sure.
So similarly, Jio's disruptive entry today, while creating a huge problem for the industry, will actually benefit consumers and the Indian telecom sector, which will lay the path for a data-intensive thing. I just want to raise one point about this content services. In TV, we have strict laws against carriage and content conflicts. Those who provide carriage, that is distribute the content, they should not be owners of the content in excess of a certain proportion. Because if they do, they might try to prioritize their content over the content of competitors. That is why when the internet in the space, we need strong net neutrality laws to ensure that nobody is privileged and nobody is disprivileged deliberately by the distributor. And this is very important when it comes to this content provision.
Sure.
But the European Union has just given its approval to the merger between AT&T and Time Warner. So clearly the world is moving this way where internet distribution, telecom distributors will also have a hand in content.
Sure. Indeed, that's the way it's moving forward, and history has shown us that telecom companies are constantly evolving as such. Going by something that you said, Ravi Prasad, as far as what TK Arun just said, the consumer seems to be the ultimate gainer in all of this. We've seen with the onset of online shopping and online portals coming out with their shopping, in fact, for Flipkart and Amazon and the likes, and also we've seen the entry of app-based taxi services, which have ultimately benefited the consumer. So that's the way we are headed as far as the telecom sector is concerned as well, isn't it?
Yes, certainly. I really see utility to the consumer as coming first, and everything else being an add-on to the utility to the consumer. Now again, I want to add on that there are going to be a lot of regulatory and legal challenges, because to pick on what Mr. T.K. Arun said, expand on that, I think this whole issue of the carriage and the content being separate, the industry is going in the opposite trend. So we will need to kind of do away with some, or re-examine some long cherished concepts such as common carriage, net neutrality, because technologically speaking and the way the industry is evolving, net neutrality is going to be a big hindrance. You cannot have 5G and net neutrality. You're going to, at the same time, you're going to see a merger of content providers and infrastructure providers, and you're going to come up with all kinds of challenges as to how people will prioritize their own content and disadvantage the content of competitors. So a lot of these content sharing, infrastructure sharing is going to come under attack. We have to really look at some new legal concepts and regulatory concepts. The second one is when you're also looking in the terms of the specific merger, that you're really going to have the Vodafone-Idea will have 35% market share, Airtel has 33% market share. So you're going to have to put in very strong rules against collusion, which is happening to some extent, or collusive behavior, which may not be deliberate, but they act in such a way. For instance, in spectrum auctions, they end up acting in such a way that they collude even if there's no intent to collude. And certainly there are 6 or 7 circles where this merged entity of Vodafone-Idea has an overwhelming market share. Let us, for instance, Kerala, it's about 65%. Then you have Gujarat, Maharashtra, Haryana, and Western UP. So really you have to see against abusive of dominant market power, and also you have to see how you are going to separate carriage and content in a way that it is not collusive. So there are a lot of regulatory challenges coming up in this kind of scenario, emerging scenario of the future.
Indeed, several regulatory challenges, Virag Gupta, and do you foresee a future in which some of these regulatory challenges really are looked at by the government and can be dealt with?
In the next, as per the news report, in the next 18 months, this merger will be completed and the impact will be seen in the next 4 years. Now I see that as per the existing laws, there may be two challenges. Number one is the corporate governance when both the brands are working together. So what type of, in the same spectrum sector, there are 24 some sectors are there. So what will have impact? And secondly, some competition commission aspect may also be there when both the brands are together and other brands are not there, what may be the impact? But I am seeing more than that. And the first and foremost regulatory challenge is there, that conventionally in Indian telecom sector, companies are paying the spectrum charges to the government, and that finally coming to the public, and by that they are offering the services. Now in the new trend, government is not able to identify the revenue areas, and those companies may not be paying further spectrum charges, and it may impact the government revenue. And secondly, if the conventionally those companies who have paid the spectrum charges and they are not able to pay back the bank loan, that in the long term it may impact the public sector banks, NPAs and other things. Now from the customer point of view, I see the three aspects where the legislation and the rules are required to be framed by the tribe. Number one is the internet speed. Now presently there is no such law or regulation by which you can ensure the proper speed of the internet, and for which data services are being charged. And the second aspect is call drop. Now if the call drop is there, and in spite of the call drop you are charging, and as per the report some 67,000 crore rupees was charged by these companies in spite of no services was given. And the third aspect is sale of the data. Now for the privacy, there may be provisions in the IPC, there may be provision in the Information Technology Act, but still these companies are the corporate entity, they are not being made liable, because directly or indirectly they may be earning money from the uses or misuses or sale of the data. So how to make them accountable, how to safeguard the interest of the customers, I think those are the bigger challenges before the customers, companies and the government.
Indeed, the challenges are several, and there could be more challenges coming up in the near future as well. But on the whole, do you believe, NK Goyal, that this kind of a merger is going to help out not just the consumer, it's going to help out the industry? Of course, we've also spoken about that at length over the last 20 minutes or so. But what are the other benefits do you see coming out of this?
Now, before I come to the benefit, let me say something other than this also. Saying today that Reliance has suddenly come up with the data as a disruptive, it was known to all of us in the telecom world that world over the voice is getting almost at zero cost. It was very well known to all of us. It was going to come. And every operator was focusing also on the data. That is the first thing. Coming to the rules regulations, yes, I agree with Virat. We still are governed by the Act of 1885. And we have moved into convergence, broadcast, education, M-Pesa, everything. So still rules are the same. Another point, as was said by Arun itself, that we have the history in the telecom itself. When we opened up the cellular phone, there was big litigation. When Reliance first time came with a scheme of 500 rupees, everybody hue and cry. Whenever somebody comes up new, they hue and cry. And we have so many persons, this is unviable, this is unprofitable, not able to take off. Because Indigo, when they started, everybody said what they are doing, how can they afford the price? You will see in the telecom sector, when we had J.S. Sharma as the chairman and secretary, he spoke sometime in Geneva that the call rate should be per second, there was hue and cry. Now is the norm is a per second. Very soon you will find all this going easily and then coming up.
Sure.
So it's not a big thing. But at the same time, merger acquisitions are fine, but for the sector we need more than that. As was said by Virat, take the case of OTT players. WhatsApp, Google Talk, they don't take a license, they don't pay any revenue fees, and we expect a telecom operator to compete with them. This is unfair, totally unfair. There are standard things we all know that the sector is now paying taxes to the extent of around 27-30%. Now here we live in a dichotomy. On the one side, we want service for the consumer. Other side, we want revenue for the government. Even though it's not topic here, but take the case of 2G. 2G was given without auction, and 2G is spread throughout the country. It is now said by operator that 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G will coexist. The moment we move to 3G, 4G, we have gone to auctions. Now, if an operator has paid huge amount for the spectrum, he is going to charge to the customer. So then what do we need? What is the policy of the government? Revenue or service? That is the conflict we go on. Industry overall, as operators are good, consumer is good, they will get good services. That's not the problem.
Sure, fair enough. this issue of call rates being the cheapest in India and one of the cheapest at least around the world as far as call rates are concerned, is that something that is going to continue? Is that something what some of these providers can continue doing in the near future?
Of course, call per se is going to be a commodity. I mean, it's hygiene. If you have a telecom connection, you'll get calls. Even today, now people have started charging you 99 rupees for unlimited calls.
Yes.
So call rates are not going to go up. Data charges will also go down. But people consume so much of data that overall telecom expenses might not come down substantially. This has been the trend the world over. Now, American telecom companies are far more profitable than European telecom companies. Partly because of the European spectrum auction disasters, but also because American telecom companies offer voice, unlimited voice, almost as a free sweetener for expensive data plans.
Sure.
So data will be the driver of revenue and voice will be almost free. So that is not an issue. Now, I personally don't think that India 3G, 4G, etc. will all coexist. I foresee 3G being switched off fairly fast. Recently, at an Economic Times Telecom Summit, Airtel CEO Gopal Vittal said the return on capital in the sector is 1%. If you put money in a savings bank account, you get 4%.
You get 4%, yeah.
So they cannot sustain this.
Sure.
And you have to generate revenue. And in order to generate revenue, they will find ways of getting people to consume more data. So data will drive their profits and drive the revenue as well as profits. And I'm sure the government will also get its revenue from this.
I'm running out of time, so quick comments from all my other guests as well. Ravi Prasad, what's the future of the telecom industry?
Well, to add to what T.K. Arun said, if you look at 2025 or 2030, the technologies will be 5G, 4G, 3G is finished. 2G, again, voice will be moved out of 2G. 2G will be kept for Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communications, and you need 2G spectrum for that. But voice is largely going to be 4G and 5G on voice over Internet protocols. And certainly you'll have to come up with innovative kind of tariffs for that. You also have to come up with, the regulators will have to come up with ways to get subscribers to move from 2G and 3G to 4G, 5G. So maybe if they compensate them for giving up their handsets.
And that's going to be work in progress as far as the companies are concerned.
Yeah, that's going to be because anything that 3G does can be done much more efficiently by 4G and 5G, both in terms of infrastructure as well as in terms of handsets.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so some incentives have been given to subscribers to move away from 2G and 3G.
Indeed. Virag Gupta, your closing comments on the program.
And this merger reflects the bleeding of telecom sector, and unless the government come with the new taxation structure like the barter or the deemed revenue is there, so telecom companies are earning revenue from just like affiliation with the Facebook or other WhatsApp or other things. So unless you tap those revenues till that time, I think that the future of the telecom sector is going to be very bleak, and government must come with the new regulations, tax structure and the laws.
Fair enough. And N.K. Goyal, your quick closing comment on the program.
Telecom sector will grow in spite of the government, in spite of the consumer, in spite of technology. Consumer will go on getting services more and more services at the lower tariff.
All right. On that note, we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. T.K. Arun, Ravi, Vishweshwaraya Prasad, Virag Gupta and N.K. Goyal. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. See you again next time.